Our next speaker is Alexandra from Mostly AI. She joined, Hi Alexandra.
Hi.
She joined Mostly AI in 2019 and took the role of Chief Trust Officer in 2020 to further strengthen public trust in synthetic data. Her talk is called Don't Stop at Data Democratization, the what, why, and how of data diversity. Before joining the company, she researched the impact of GDPR on the deployment of AI in Europe and many other interesting things. So, welcome, Alexandra.
Many
Floor is
thanks.
yours.
Pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. Many thanks for having me here today. I actually don't have any slides today. It will be purely verbal, but I hope you will enjoy this presentation. To kick off, I want to ask who here in this audience has ever watched a Netflix show in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years? I can't see any show of hands, but I would assume that at least a few of you have been on Netflix during the pandemic in the last 3 to 4 years. So you might have noticed that particularly Netflix produced series, we have seen an increase of diversity and inclusion. Characters from different ethnicities, different sexual orientations, and many other aspects of diversity and inclusion. So, why am I telling you about diversity and inclusion on Netflix? Well, I'm not stating that Netflix is already where the entertainment industry should be when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but they're at least trying. Netflix calls what they're doing building a legacy of diversity and inclusion. And what they try to achieve is to normalize seeing different ethnic groups in television and series and films, and also to seeing different varieties of sexual orientations and many other aspects of individual variety on their entertainment. And the reason they do that is because television series and movies have the power to shape societal perception and to change what we consider as normal and what we consider to be socially acceptable. And that's a very important undertaking, because if you think back to TV shows that have been produced, let's say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you might be astounded to see how much, for example, homophobic content is in those types of shows. And even though it's just a small contribution to creating a more open society, one can argue that the many hours many people spend per week on Netflix and other streaming platforms have an impact on how they shape viewers' perception of society and of reality. And this brings me to today's topic, which is don't stop at data democratization, the how, what, no, sorry, the what, why, and how of data diversity. If you talk with decision makers in the analytics and AI domain, they oftentimes care a lot about increasing data literacy in their workforce and increasing data democratization. Data literacy, I assume everybody knows it since we're here in the AI and data literacy track, but basically it's your ability to understand and work with data versus data democratization, being it now internally within your organization or also externally, is making data more accessible, not only for a privileged group of few individuals, but for all the creative minds within an organization or beyond. So many decision makers think that those two elements are fundamental to establish data-driven and AI innovation. And they are right. But I want to argue that there's a third puzzle piece to this mix, which is data diversity, that decision makers and also data scientists should care about. So, what am I describing when I talk about data diversity? I'm talking about granular data that has representation not only of the majority group, but plenty of examples of minority members, being these different ethnicities and many other aspects. The reason being that this is important is similar to what I described with Netflix. If you start to work with data, start to analyze data, and start to drive conclusions from data, and you only ever see information about the majority of people, will you be able to understand what minority members need? Will you be able to develop products that are diverse and inclusive and cater to the needs of everybody within your customer base, as opposed to the majority group? Probably not. And therefore, it's highly important that whether you're a data scientist or a chief data officer or somebody in charge of democratizing access to data, you not only think about how can you make data more broadly available, but what type of data are you making available? Similar to the Netflix example or television shows from 20 years ago. What was normal 20 years ago and what shaped the societal perception in television programs we saw 20 years ago is fundamentally different to what we consume in our entertainment, in our movies, in our media nowadays. And it would really be strange to watch old TV shows and see how they talk about different diversity inclusion topics. And if you would only consume that type of content, that type of data, it will also influence what perception you have of the world and what conclusions you can make. And therefore, it's quite important that the data you use is diverse and representative, not only of the majority group. So that's the what, having more diverse data, and the why you need to have that. But how can you achieve that? And I assume many of you by now are wondering, what about privacy? Do I really want to have my sensitive information about sexual orientation, about ethnicity, about religious beliefs, about cultural aspects in the hands of organization and thoroughly analyzed? Probably not, because privacy, of course, is a very important value that needs to be upheld. So, a challenge that many organizations face when they think about increasing the diversity and the representatives of their data is actually privacy and privacy regulations like GDPR or CCPA. And if you think of legacy anonymization techniques like masking or obfuscation, they have two issues. One issue is that these techniques are destructive by nature. So you have an original data set in its full diversity. But in order to attempt to make it anonymous, you have to eliminate many parts of the data set, drag it through, shuffle it, aggregate it, whatever approach you take. The consequence of this is, on the one hand, less analytical value because there's less granularity, less detail to this data. But besides the analytical value, it also has a significant impact on the diversity and your subsequent ability to understand what minority groups in your organization might want. Besides this utility and diversity problem, legacy anonymization comes with a third pitfall. And this is that it's actually not capable of protecting privacy anymore. There are dozens of papers out there who have shown that once legacy anonymization techniques are applied to big data assets, particularly behavioral data like your financial transactions, healthcare records, or maybe even your location data, it's not possible to protect privacy anymore. For example, a study showed that only 3 credit card transactions per customer, even though you would only reveal the merchant and the date of that transaction. So let's say a coffee bought yesterday at Starbucks, or I don't know, pen bought at Walmart 2 days before online or something like that. And the third merchant and the amount of your transaction or the date of this transaction. Only these 2 data points, merchant and date of transaction, from 3 transactions are sufficient to re-identify over 80% of your customers. If you think how many data points you work day to day with and how many data points organizations usually collect about their customers, you are in the hundreds of attributes, sometimes even thousands or many thousands. Retaining only 3 of these attributes from 3 transactions definitely is not much analytical value, but that's already sufficient to re-identify customers. So the conclusion of academia is, don't apply legacy anonymization techniques to big data assets, particularly behavioral data. But what should you do if you want to have granular data that's privacy safe, of analytical value, and has enough representation of minority groups in there? And one potential solution is using AI-generated synthetic data. I would love to do a show of hands now, but unfortunately I can't see anybody. So I would be curious who has heard of AI-generated synthetic data so far. If you haven't, don't worry, I'll give an explanation. AI-generated synthetic data is a new approach to data anonymization that's fit for purpose, particularly when we think about big data assets, behavioral data assets. The best way to understand synthetic data is actually to look at synthetic images of people. Think of super realistic pictures. There could be pictures potentially of someone's best friend or any celebrity or something like that. And think of a photo that looks super realistic. But with synthetic data, this type of photo has, or this type of person on the photo has never existed before. AI generated synthetic data uses generative AI to create new data that doesn't have any one-to-one relations to the source data it was trained on. What does this mean? So with AI generated faces, the first research started from NVIDIA, where they trained an algorithm on hundreds of thousands of human pictures, up to the point where this algorithm fully understood how a human face looked like, that humans usually have two eyes, a nose that is somewhere positioned in the middle of the face, this type of hairstyles, this type of skin colors, and everything else that there is to learn about the logics of a human face. And once this training on the original data was completed, oh, sorry, I mirrored here. Once this data or this training on the original data was completed, the algorithm, the generative AI, could be used to create new synthetic faces from scratch. And the result would be stunningly realistic pictures of people that have never existed before. And this approach of AI generated synthetic data doesn't work in a manner that you just take the eyes of training sample A, the mouse of training sample B in the data set, and so on, and just shuffle this together to create something new. That's not how it works. It just takes everything that's learned from the data, the logics, the structures, the correlations, and uses that to create new data from scratch. So in correctly generated AI-grade synthetic data, you don't have any one-to-one relations between data subjects from your real data and data subjects from your synthetic data. We at Mostly AI actually do structured synthetic data. So we work with banks, with insurances, telecommunication operators, and so on. And we take their, or we provide a software for their structured synthetic data that they can use to anonymize it and create completely new synthetic customers with the synthetic transactions. But the benefit of synthetic data for data anonymization is that on the one hand, it's completely privacy safe. It's fully anonymous data that can't be re-identified because you don't have any one-to-one relations between your real customers and your synthetic customers. But at the same time, while ensuring this privacy aspect, it also helps you to retain nearly all of the utility of your data set. So AI-generated synthetic data is capable of understanding the structures, the correlations, the time dependencies in the original data and using that to generate the new synthetic data. And on the one hand, this has tremendous impact when it comes to privacy preserving machine learning. In fact, we actually tomorrow have a tech tutorial where we show you how to generate AI-generated structured synthetic data and how you can assess its utility for machine learning and do privacy preserving AI on it. But it's also highly important in the context of fairness and diversity, because in contrast to these legacy anonymization techniques, which always worked on the real data and just tried to remove those attributes that they seem to be deemed to be re-identifying, it actually helps you to retain also the rare examples, the edge cases of your data set, and understand how not only the majority group of your customers is behaving, but also the minority groups. And in the context of fairness, this has a tremendous impact what you can build and for whom you can build it. So for example, one of our clients, the health insurance Humana in the United States, they're the fourth largest health insurance. They have started working with fair synthetic data, where they use synthetic data to have a more diverse data set that their downstream models then are capable to pick up not only signals about the majority group, but also about minority groups, like, for example, Native American women with a rare medical condition. And this is the beauty of synthetic data, that it can help you in the first place to see what you have in what diversity you have in your customer base without risking the privacy of your customers. But it's not only giving you access to privacy sensitive data in a privacy safe way. Synthetic data can also be used as fair synthetic data. So it's possible to generate more examples according to a given mathematical fairness definition to increase the percentage of minority citizens or customers in your data set. And this again can help you with AI fairness. Another aspect, how synthetic data is used to improve fairness and diversity and inclusion in data sets, is that since it's privacy safe, organizations have an easier job collecting data from different subsidiaries all over the world. think of big multinationals. When they develop AI that needs to be rolled out all around the globe, they oftentimes have a privacy issue and only train their AI on the data that they have, let's say, in the United States. But we all know that there are some cultural differences between Americans, let's say, people from Asia, people from Africa, and people from Europe. So with synthetic data, they come in a position where it gets quite easy to share granular data that's usable for AI with the data science team located in the United States, for example, so that they can build a model and AI that can cater to the different need of different cultures. And there are many more aspects how synthetic data can actually help with fairness. But due to time, I can't go through every one of them. What I want to leave you with today is that not only access to data is important, but also the diversity of the data is important. So what I would wish for you to do is whenever you get access to data, or if you're in the position of making data available to others in your organization, always think about whether this data is representative, whether you have enough examples of the minority group, and also ask yourself, is there somebody missing in the data? Is there somebody not represented? Because particularly when we want to build responsible AI, this is something that every data scientist should do when working with data. I'm not sure if I'm capable of taking questions. Maybe the moderator can answer this question for me, but I would be super curious to hear your thoughts on that and also your questions you have to the topic.
Yeah, let's see if we have any questions. So far, nothing's coming in. Thank you, Alexandra, for very intriguing and inspiring talk.
Many
While
thanks.
we wait